My husband said, "Don't come to my office party, it'll be awkward with my ex there." Those words hit me like a slap I didn't see coming. I froze in the kitchen, the coffee I was holding trembling between my fingers. Awkward? That's all he called it? Something in me snapped, not anger, not yet, but a sharp, simmering suspicion. I'm Layla, and I thought I knew my husband, Adam, inside out. We've been married for 3 years, living a life that, to outsiders, looked perfect: dinners, weekend trips, and late-night movie marathons. But perfection, I'm learning, is the perfect disguise. Adam, charming and magnetic, had always been careful with his words. I trusted him, or at least, I thought I did. But this warning? It felt off. Why would he casually suggest I skip a social event? If it were truly just awkward, wouldn't he offer to make it comfortable? Something about the way he said it, the hesitation, the almost imperceptible avoidance of eye contact, set off alarms in my mind. He's the villain in this story, though he doesn't know it yet. Not in the dramatic sense, of course. He's my partner, my husband, but he carries secrets like a shadow follows a person, unseen until the light hits. The idea of his ex, sitting there, sipping wine, laughing, was supposed to be harmless. Yet, his nervous avoidance told a different story. We've always had an intense dynamic. Adam is the type to keep control, orchestrate, plan. I, on the other hand, trust too easily, smile too freely, and let things slide. That imbalance has always defined us. But suddenly, I felt the scales tipping. The calm in our living room seemed too perfect, like the quiet before a storm. I asked him lightly, "Are you hiding something?" He laughed it off, dismissing my concern. "It's nothing, really. Just don't worry about it. You'll see, it's nothing." But his words were like a red flag waving in the wind. The air seemed thicker, the shadows in our apartment deeper. I felt my heartbeat quicken, my intuition screaming that tonight wasn't about awkwardness. Tonight, it was about a choice he hadn't yet revealed, and maybe, a betrayal I hadn't expected. I sat down at the table, staring at my coffee, watching it swirl. The surface of the dark liquid looked like glass, reflecting my uneasy face. Something was off, I could feel it in my bones. And deep down, a small voice whispered, "This isn't about his ex. This is about you. And soon, you'll understand why he's trying so hard to keep you away." And just like that, the night I had planned to stay home felt like a prelude to a storm I was already caught in. Shouldn't have gone to the office party. My gut screamed at me as I stepped into the sleek, modern lobby, the low hum of chatter and clinking glasses hitting me like a wave. Adam's coworkers greeted me politely, some with genuine smiles, others with a subtle avoidance that made my stomach twist. From the start, small things set my nerves on edge. Adam seemed distracted. He leaned in to whisper to someone, his voice too low for me to hear, and then quickly glanced at me, forcing a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. I noticed how certain colleagues hovered closer to him than usual, laughing at jokes he hadn't even made. It wasn't just the ex, no, it was the way he carried himself tonight, like he was performing for an audience I wasn't allowed to join. Then came the first suspicious call. His phone buzzed against the table. He excused himself, stepping into a corner with an air of secrecy. I tried to catch snippets of the conversation. "Not yet, wait until later. I'll handle it," but the words were muffled. When he returned, he smiled too brightly, as if nothing had happened. But I felt it, a tension beneath the surface, something deliberate and hidden. I found myself scanning the room, noticing little inconsistencies. A coworker dropped a mention of a project Adam had supposedly finished alone, but I remembered seeing me handle half the work. Another comment about a bonus Adam had received, money I never knew about, flashed through my mind. Why hadn't he told me? Had I imagined these signs, or was he hiding more than just a casual concern over his ex? And then there were the subtle digs. a coworker made a joke about a married woman needing to know her place. Adam laughed, but too quickly, as if trying to signal that he was on their side, not mine. Each smile he offered me felt rehearsed, like an actor playing the role of the devoted husband. And my heart, stubbornly trusting, kept finding cracks in the performance. Emotionally, I was unraveling. I wanted to trust him, to believe in the life we had built. But my instincts were screaming. Every laugh, every secretive glance, every whispered word I couldn't hear seemed to point to a bigger picture I wasn't yet allowed to see. My thoughts raced in a loop. Is he cheating? Is this about money? Or is it something even worse? By the time I left the party, I felt drained, not from dancing or socializing, but from the weight of doubt settling over me like a dark cloud. Adam walked me to the car, his hand brushing mine in that familiar, reassuring gesture. Yet, instead of comfort, it left me cold. The closer I felt to him, the more I realized I had no real idea who he was tonight. And in the back of my mind, a single, chilling thought kept repeating, he doesn't want me there for a reason. And whatever it is, it's bigger than I can imagine. It started with a message. I didn't mean to see it, but Adam's phone had fallen off the table as he reached for his coat. I hesitated, then curiosity and a creeping dread pushed me to glance at the screen. There it was, a string of texts from his ex, playful, intimate, familiar, the kind of words you'd expect from a couple who still had something between them. My chest tightened, breath caught in my throat. So that's why he didn't want me at the party. The words I'd laughed off earlier, the casual awkward with my ex, now felt like a lie wrapped in venom. But it wasn't just the texts. Photos followed, screenshots of private dinners, little gifts exchanged, and subtle promises that Adam had made behind my back. All those moments I thought were ours, weekend brunches, late-night conversations, were tainted with his duplicity. My hands shook as I pieced together the truth. He had been lying, hiding, betraying not just me, but the life we had built together. The anger hit me first, sharp and burning, like a wildfire in my veins. How could he? How could the man I trusted with my heart, my every hope, be sneaking around like this, so casually, so carelessly? Tears blurred my vision, but they weren't the first response. No, rage came first, the kind that makes your fists clench before your knees even know they're shaking. I tried to confront him later that night, waiting until the house was quiet. I asked calmly at first, voice trembling, "Is this true?" He froze. And then, the rehearsed charm returned, the calm, dismissive tone I knew so well. "Layla, it's not what it looks like," he said, brushing it off, as if words alone could erase the betrayal written all over my phone. But I couldn't let it go. The heartbreak followed, heavy and suffocating, seeping into every corner of my mind. Disbelief turned into anger, and anger into a dangerous curiosity. What else has he been hiding? What else can I find? By the end of the night, I sat alone in our bedroom, phone in hand, staring at the evidence that proved what I had feared all along. Adam slept beside me, oblivious, or pretending to be, and I realized something crucial: this wasn't just about a party. It wasn't even about an ex. This was about trust, betrayal, and the life we had promised each other. And he had shattered it without a second thought. But beneath the pain, a plan started to take shape. The kind of plan that doesn't come out of spite, but out of a desire for justice. My heartbreak had turned into something sharper, something focused. I wasn't sure what I would do yet. I only knew that Adam had underestimated me. He had assumed that I would remain blind, passive, forgiving. He didn't know that sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest storms. And in the darkness of that room, as I watched him sleep, I whispered to myself, "You will regret this. You have no idea what's coming." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, but it brought no warmth, only a harsh clarity. Adam was in the kitchen, humming to himself, pretending the night had never happened. I watched him from the bedroom doorway, my hands gripping the frame, my mind replaying every hidden message, every secret smile he had shared with her. For hours, I did nothing. I sipped my coffee, staring blankly at the walls, letting the sting of betrayal wash over me. But as the day went on, something inside me shifted. Pain alone would not bring justice. Tears alone would not fix the lie he had woven into my life. If I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had done, if I wanted to reclaim the power he had stolen, I had to act. The trigger came unexpectedly. I was scrolling through our shared photo album, the one we kept for memories, when I noticed something, a series of pictures subtly edited, cropped, or tagged in ways that included his ex, sometimes in moments that should have been just us. The realization hit me like a punch to the chest. He hadn't just betrayed me in secret. He had been flaunting it, carefully weaving her into the story of our lives, pretending I would never notice. Anger and hurt collided, but out of the wreckage rose clarity. I wasn't a victim, I was a player who had been underestimated. And for the first time in days, I felt the pulse of something powerful, determination. I stood in the living room, shaking slightly, but with my mind sharper than it had been in months. Every lie he had told, every secret he had kept, every moment of dismissive charm, it all added up to one undeniable truth: he had assumed I would do nothing. He had assumed I would silently forgive, silently forget. But I wouldn't. Not anymore. I thought of all the small signs I had ignored, all the unease I had brushed aside. Now, each one was a clue, a weapon in the arsenal of my mind. I would not act blindly, but strategically. I would watch, I would wait, and I would reclaim what he had taken: respect, truth, and control over my own life. For the first time since that fateful message, I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I was alive in a way I hadn't been before. The hurt was still there, a shadow in the corners of my mind, but it no longer had the power to paralyze me. It was fuel, fire, and focus. I whispered to myself, softly but firmly, "You thought I'd break. You thought I'd leave it alone. You were wrong. This ends on my terms." And with that, I began to plan. Not recklessly, not in anger, but with the calm precision of someone who had been underestimated for far too long. Adam had given me the perfect opportunity. He had shown his weakness, his arrogance, his betrayal. And I would use it. Because sometimes, the most dangerous storms are the ones that rise quietly, from someone everyone assumed would stay silent, didn't confront Adam again. That was my first move: silence. I let him believe his charm had worked, that his half-truths and dismissive smiles had settled my doubts. He kissed my forehead before work, called me baby, and reminded me, almost casually, about another upcoming office event. "Just coworkers," he said. "Nothing you'd enjoy." I smiled and nodded. Inside, I was already 10 steps ahead. Step 1 was proof. Not assumptions. Not emotions. Facts. I started small, screenshots of his messages, backed up to a private drive. I synced his old tablet, the one he'd forgotten was still connected to his accounts. Late-night texts. Lunch meetings labeled as work catch-ups. Calendar invites that didn't match his explanations. Every lie left a paper trail, and Adam was careless enough to think love had made me blind. Step 2 was pattern. I tracked dates, times, excuses. His late meetings always fell on the same days she posted from upscale restaurants near his office. His business trips aligned perfectly with her sudden weekend disappearances. It wasn't random, it was routine. And routines are easy to expose. Step 3 hurt the most. I reviewed our finances. Small withdrawals here. Gifts there. A hotel charge he'd blamed on a colleague's error. He wasn't just cheating, he was funding it with the life we shared. Every discovery felt like a fresh cut, but I stayed focused. Pain had a purpose now. Through all of this, Adam felt untouchable. He laughed easily. He talked about promotions, hinted at how respected he was at work. He even joked one night, I'm glad you don't get jealous. Makes life easier. I swallowed my anger and played my role perfectly. The trusting wife. The quiet presence. The woman who didn't ask questions anymore. Then came the trap. Adam mentioned, almost proudly, that his company was hosting another formal office party, bigger this time. Executives. Spouses. Speeches. You probably don't want to come, he said, not even looking at me. Same issue as before. I looked up slowly and smiled. You're right, I said softly. It would be awkward. The relief on his face told me everything. What he didn't know was that I'd already emailed HR, politely, innocently, asking about guest policies for spouses at company events. Or that I'd spoken to a colleague's wife who'd noticed more than she let on. Or that I had timestamps, receipts, and messages neatly organized, waiting for the right moment. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to let the truth walk into the room wearing his confidence, and watch it collapse. As Adam fell asleep beside me that night, I stared at the ceiling, heart steady, mind razor sharp. He still thought he was in control. He thought the story belonged to him. But the stage was set now. And very soon, the same office he tried to keep me away from, would become the place where everything he hid would finally be seen. The night of the office gala arrived, and Adam was glowing with that smug confidence I had come to know so well. Dressed in a tailored suit, he clinked glasses with coworkers, laughing too loud, as if announcing to the room, "Look at me. I'm untouchable." I walked in beside him, not as a shadow, but as a presence he had underestimated. He barely noticed me at first, too busy charming executives and whispering to his ex, who lingered near the buffet, radiant and oblivious to the storm about to hit. I smiled quietly, letting him bask in his illusion of control. Then, the first subtle strike, my email to HR. Just minutes before the gala, I had CC'd them and several senior executives, forwarding a meticulously organized dossier of Adam's behavior, screenshots of texts, calendar logs, receipts, and photos, all proving his secret rendezvous with his ex and the misuse of company funds to fund their private meetings. The room's attention shifted as the HR manager approached Adam, papers in hand, voice calm but firm. "Adam, could we step aside? There are some urgent matters regarding your conduct and company resources." He laughed nervously at first, shrugging it off as a minor administrative blip. But then came the second blow. Whispers of colleagues, who had already been discreetly briefed by me, started circulating. Eyes darted. Phones discreetly snapped pictures. Murmurs grew into questions, direct, pointed, impossible to ignore. I stayed silent, sipping my drink, watching the smile vanish from his face, replaced by panic. He glanced at his ex, who finally realized the magnitude of the situation, confusion replacing the casual charm she had carried. By the end of the evening, Adam was escorted into a private office with HR and the executives, his confident facade crumbling by the second. His ex slipped out quietly, avoiding the chaos. The betrayal he thought was hidden in shadows was now exposed in a room full of witnesses, and the consequences were immediate: suspension, investigation, and whispers of permanent termination. As I stepped outside into the cool night, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. The anger, the heartbreak, the sleepless nights, they had all led to this moment. Adam had underestimated me, believed my silence was weakness. But silence had been my weapon, patience my armor. The streets were quiet, the city lights reflecting off the glass skyscrapers, and I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. Justice didn't roar, it struck quietly, precisely, and without mercy. I whispered to myself, the words sharp in the night air, "You thought I'd stay away. You thought it would be awkward. But it's not awkward. It's perfect." And in that moment, I realized something profound. Betrayal is never just an ending, it can be the spark that lights a fire stronger than any heartbreak. The morning after the gala, I woke to a silence that felt almost foreign. The kind of silence that follows a storm, the calm when the wreckage is finally visible. Adam wasn't home. His office calls went straight to voicemail, and the messages from coworkers ranged from subtle congratulations to curious questions I didn't even need to answer. I poured myself a coffee, savoring the warmth, and for the first time in weeks, I felt light. The betrayal that had clawed at me, that had threatened to consume my nights and shadow my days, no longer had power. Adam's lies, carefully hidden for years, had been laid bare in front of the very people who once admired him. He had lost credibility, respect, and control. Everything he had assumed was untouchable. The HR investigation confirmed everything I had suspected. Misuse of company resources, deceit, secret affairs, all documented and undeniable. Colleagues I had once considered distant nodded at me in quiet acknowledgement, their respect visible in their eyes. I didn't need to gloat. The truth had done that for me. I realized something important. The storm he caused in my life had become my strength. I was no longer the trusting, quiet woman who had let unease fester silently. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my power. Every sleepless night, every pang of heartbreak, had forged me into someone stronger, sharper, and wiser. Walking through the city streets later that day, I felt free in a way I hadn't known I could. The betrayal had been a mirror, showing me not just his flaws, but my own resilience. I smiled at strangers, greeted friends warmly, and felt a renewed connection to the world around me. Adam's shadow, once looming over my life, had vanished completely. And then it hit me, the poetic justice of it all. He had tried to humiliate me by weaving his ex into our lives, thinking I would retreat. But in doing so, he had exposed himself entirely. His own arrogance had built the stage for his downfall. The irony was delicious, and the lesson clear: those who deceive often dig their own graves. I look at you, watching this, and I have to ask, have you ever been betrayed? Felt the sting of someone you trusted most? If so, you know the mix of pain, anger, and the desire for justice. Share your story in the comments. Let's remind the world that we don't stay silent, we don't stay broken, we rise stronger. And remember, if you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more tales of betrayal, revenge, and the power of standing your ground. Because in the end, the hands that try to bury you often end up digging their own grave.